But our focus tonight is on Rate the Budget. Union Budget 2017 has been delivered, and over the next couple of hours we will focus with some of the country's finest economic minds, business minds and politicians to get a sense of what this budget really means for the country and the economy. But I want to start at the top with 10 big takeaways. Takeaway number 1, income tax on rupees 2.5 to 5 lakhs has been slashed. That's the first big takeaway. Second takeaway, 10% income tax surcharge on 50 lakhs to 1 crore. Cash transactions above rupees 3 lakhs have been barred. Is this a step towards a less cash economy? Takeaway number 4, the 2,000 rupee cap on cash donations to political parties is the new cap. Earlier it was 20,000. New electoral bonds for donations to political parties. Takeaway number 6, law to confiscate assets of economic offenders who flee the country. Takeaway number 7, 48,000 crore allocation to Manrega, the highest ever. Takeaway number 8, rupees 1.87 crores rural sector allocation hike 24%. Takeaway number 9, corporate tax on firms with turnover up to rupees 50 crores cut from 30% to 25% to benefit micro and small industries. And importantly, the Foreign Investment Promotion Board will be abolished. These are just some of the various takeaways that we have. Joining me across this table are Ashok Lahiri, former Chief Economic Advisor, Nitin Desai, Senior Economist, Amit Mitra from the Swaraj Abhiyan, who's also going to give us a view of the farmers and what their concerns are. I'm also joined by Bipin Preet Singh, founder and CEO of MobiKwik, to get a sense of what this means for the digital economy. Subhashish Gangopadhyay, who's been an economic advisor when the finance minister was Mr. Chidambaram, will also be with us. But I also want to go first to my first guest, Jayant Sinha, former MoS Finance Minister now of State for Civil Aviation in the government, joining me. Mr. Sinha, thank you very much. You're smiling. Do you believe the country has reason to smile? I've given 10 big takeaways, and in a moment I'm going to give you what I believe are the 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses. But why do you believe the country has reason to smile, sir?
The country has reason to smile because this budget is taking forward some very important key reforms and introducing a few additional major reforms as well. And what you see over the last few budgets, the President's address, all of the policy moves that we've been making over the last 3 or 4 years is that we are in fact rebuilding the Indian economy for sustainable, fast growth. And we are doing that in 3 very important ways, Rajdeep. Number 1, we are giving important target groups, that is the poor, the farmers, women, the youth, the tools, the opportunities, the resources to really be able to improve their lives. So that's one very important thing we've been doing. You've seen that through this budget as well. Number 2, we have been really putting in place an advanced 21st century infrastructure through railways, roads, airports and in the rural sector as well. And third, what we are also doing is we are bringing down cash to GDP, the black economy, all of the old way of doing things in the economy, and building up the new way of doing things, which is leading to higher tax to GDP, more digital payments, and an ability for the state to really be able to supply the citizens the services that they need. So what you see through all of the action that we are undertaking and brilliantly executed in this budget as well is really rebuilding the Indian economy for this type of fast growth.
Okay, lots of guests are going to be joining me, Mr. Sinha. I'm going to come to you for sharp, short, 30-second answers to what I am calling, Mr. Sinha, the 5 burning questions. Question number 1, was this a zero-risk, 100% safe budget? It lacked imagination, or it lacked the great big idea. How will you respond to those who will say this in tomorrow's editorial pages? This was a zero-risk, 100% safe budget, lacked a big idea.
The big idea is the transformation of election financing. We are absolutely doing that through the electoral bond that we are issuing, through the restrictions on cash going into political parties. So that's a very big idea. There are 2 or 3 other big ideas as well. Number one is really transforming affordable housing so that affordable housing becomes available to everyone, accessible to everyone. Number 3, massive increase in both rural infrastructure as well as urban infrastructure. So what we've been doing for infrastructure for all these 3 or 4 years continues apace. And then, the work that we're doing in deregulation, opening up the public sector enterprises, falling ahead with strategic disinvestment, these are all very big moves that we have made in this budget as well. And then, of course, tax simplification.
But I want to come to one of the ideas because it's one of my burning questions. You said that the big idea includes political funding being made more transparent. Now, the fact is, and this is my question, the rupees 2,000 political funding cap is welcome, sir, but is it enough? I can, under thousands of names, put in 2,000 rupees and get over that funding cap. Do you really believe that this is going to curb political corruption, or is it a chuha which is going to try and capture the mountain of corruption?
I think it's going to make a big difference, and it's particularly going to make a difference for parties like ours that believe in transparent financing, that believe in doing things the right way, and compressing the black economy. Now, if you have a political party that is determined to do things that are a violation of both law and ethics, then of course we will have to see how we can best constrain that. But this is a very important step forward, and I think it provides a pathway for parties to really do election financing in a transparent and in an honest manner.
My third question, you mentioned tax simplification at the end as a strength of the budget, but the third question I want to put as a burning question, tax changes enough to enthuse the middle class post demonetization? You know that the country has hurt, there has been pain post demonetization. Are these tax changes enough to enthuse industry? Yes, SMEs have got benefits, but big industry, some would question, put a question mark on that. And the middle class, the lower middle class gets tax breaks, but not the upper middle class. And there is little being done to stimulate demand. You've made no changes in indirect taxes. Where is the demand going to be stimulated to kickstart growth and investment?
Now, there's a massive boost to both rural consumption and urban consumption through this budget. Rural consumption through obviously spending much more in Narega, all of the rural infrastructure spending that we're doing, which is going to be pumping money into the rural economy, that's going to boost rural consumption. Obviously, we are also working to double farmers' income. That will also boost rural consumption. So that's a massive boost. As far as urban consumption is concerned, there, of course, we've reduced taxes, and that the tax rate reduction of going to 5% from 10% will boost everybody's consumption, because it means an across the board 12,500 reduction in taxes for everybody. The other important thing to consider as far as tax simplification is concerned is that for 96% of businesses, and these are businesses that are up to 50 crores, so we're not really talking about the small petty shop owner or the person running a cycle repair shop or any of that. We're talking about fairly sizable businesses up to 50 crores. They're going to go to a tax rate of just 25% in a very clean, transparent way. Those that are up to 2 crores in turnover are going to a presumptive taxation system of 6%, which makes it very simple, and that really will enable 96% of India's businesses to be able to file their taxes very cleanly, efficiently and simply.
I just want to take the fourth burning, or my next burning question, to the opposition. Jai Panda of the Biju Janata Dal and Shashi Tharoor of the Congress are joining me also, Mr. Sinha. And I want to ask them this because you're presenting the rosy picture of the budget. They may have a different view. Shashi Tharoor, will this budget assure more jobs for youth post demonetization? Rahul Gandhi seems to believe that this budget will not create more jobs. We've got the likes of Jayant Sinha and others suggesting there will be a boost to infrastructure, there will be a boost to spending. Your response to the Congress party virtually rejecting the government's claim that this budget will boost growth?
Right, I've just joined you, so I'm afraid I've missed whatever argument Jayant made, but I can assure you that we don't see enough in this budget that would suggest a spike in youth employment. If anything, when pressed, I think government spokesmen tend to say that, of course, Indians are all going to become entrepreneurs and employ themselves. But there certainly isn't any prospect of jobs. And if you look at the last 2 or 3 years of the NDA's record, their highest in terms of job creation in a fiscal year has been 135,000, 1,35,000 against Mr. Modi's professed claims of 10 crore jobs during his term. So we're looking at a very serious shortfall of jobs, and there's nothing more dangerous for our country than young people who, on the one hand, are not adequately employable because skill development has been moving very sluggishly under the NDA government, and at the same time have no employment to go to even when they become employable. So not good news at all, I'm afraid, on that front.
Quick response, Mr. Sinha, to what you heard from Shashi Tharoor, because jobs is a big concern. The question again, will this budget kickstart growth and investment post demonetization?
The budget will absolutely kickstart growth and investment, and please recognize that what Shashi is talking about is only one very small aspect of job creation, which is what is happening in the formal sector. You have to look at both the informal sector as well as look at what is happening as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. We said very clearly that the Mudra loan program of 1.22 lakh crores last year was extremely successful. It went out to crores of people, and that this year we are going to double that, and that will really help people as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, small businesses are concerned. And Shashi knows very well that most job creation around the world actually does not come from large companies, it comes from small companies, and those are precisely the ones that we are helping through Mudra. In addition to that, as I was saying earlier, one of the very important ways in which we are trying to drive the rural economy is by enabling job creation in the rural sector in areas such as agro-processing, dairying, which is getting 8,000 crores of funding in this budget, through horticulture, through a variety of other mechanisms where people in the rural areas can find those jobs as well. So whether you look at it in terms of the informal sector or whether you look at entrepreneurship, those are very large and vast numbers when it comes to job creation. The formal sector, the large companies around the world have not been adding as many jobs, which is why through all of the other methods that we're using, we are being able to place people and enable our young people to find good jobs.
I want to come back for a moment to political funding, because there's been a lot of interest in that. Jai Panda, do you believe that the government has taken the first major step towards cleaning up our political funding system, or is it, as some are suggesting, or I am suggesting, it's a bit of a mouse designed to capture the mountain of corruption? It won't work.
Rajdeep, you may be aware that this has been a passion of mine, and for many years I have been writing about cleaning up political funding to the Election Commission, to the Law Commission, and I've also been writing many op-eds and on giving TV interviews. So this reduction of the anonymous donations cap from 20,000 rupees to 2,000 rupees was specifically put out by the Election Commission only a few weeks ago, and I think it's a very good step. It will not totally eliminate black money because there's still that anonymous cap of 2,000 rupees, but it will go a long way. It will make it much harder because parties will have to claim 10 times more donors for the same amount of money. Also, the electoral bond may be, and it's an interesting thing, I have to study it further, but it could lead to a situation where tax-paid legitimate money comes into the political system rather than illicit money. But I would say the following, these two are historic steps, because for years, maybe for decades, we've been talking about this fundamental cleansing of the system, and this is the first time any major step has been taken. It will not be enough. More will need to be done in the future. State funding will have to be considered, and state funding ought to be prioritized in a way that it incentivizes small legitimate tax-paid donors and not put it on the same playing field as corporate donors. So that level playing field needs to come in. More has to be done, but this is a huge start.
I'm going to ask all three of you, therefore, in conclusion, starting with you, Shashi Tharoor, to rate the budget. That's what we are calling the program, on a scale of 10. How much are you giving this budget? Now, don't be a congressman and churlishly say 1 or 0 on 10. But tell me honestly, what would you rate this budget as?
Now, I'm not going to rate the budget, Rajdeep, because the budget is all about intentions, slogans, promises. What I'm concerned about is implementation. When this budget speaks about 4.1% agricultural growth, when the NDA has presided over 1.3% for each of the last 3 years, I wonder where is the gap between their rhetoric, their numbers, and reality. When the numbers don't add up, when you've seen some real fundamental questions about the credibility of the assurances and promises made, then to be honest, rating means no sense. You can rate good intentions. We'll give them high marks for good intentions. I have some real doubts about their actual accomplishment on the ground. Even the fiscal deficit, for God's sake, it was supposed to be 3%. They were going to be held to that. They've admitted to 3.2%, and Mr. Jaitley's already given himself further wriggle room by talking about some committee's recommendation for an extra 0.5. At a time when the entire world is looking at our economy in the wake of demonetization, that could send a very alarming signal and a negative signal to foreign investors. Jayant did say something unchallenged about small companies creating jobs. The fact is, small companies are the ones that have been terribly affected by demonetization. The All India Manufacturers Organization has put out a report showing a dramatic decline in 35% in employment and 40% in revenues in the 50 days after demonetization. So the small companies, the micro, medium and small enterprises have been the biggest victims of Mr. Modi's ill-considered and hasty decision to demonetize. Obviously, all of this is going to have an impact. The budget is in complete denial of this economic reality. It really is speaking in the air and without sufficient regard, it seems to me, for the ground realities of the economy. That's the real problem we're facing. Therefore, rating the budget is a meaningless exercise. It's what actually happens on the ground that matters.
Okay, respond to that, Jayant Sinha. The difference between intention and implementation, and importantly, this budget is not seen to safeguard small and micro industries to the extent it should have from the risks of demonetization. Given that, how do you rate the budget? Those are among the negatives that are coming up. Fiscal prudence may not help in inflicting the demonetization inflicted slowdown. No measures to boost demand like cuts in indirect taxes. No big measure to create jobs. No measure to widen income tax net. No word on demonetization yields. These are seen as 5 of the big weaknesses of the budget. What do you believe, therefore, you would rate the budget as, Mr. Sinha?
The budget definitely deserves an 8 or a 9. Shashi is absolutely wrong. Our implementation record has been absolutely outstanding. And it's not, the BJP saying that or the government saying it. It's agencies around the world. It's objective observers. It's every day in the newspapers when you read what foreign investors or people around the world are saying about our economic track record. We've also pulled off demonetization in a very flawless way. And in fact, the long-term benefits of demonetization are really starting to appear now. For example, with tax collection growing up by 34%. So in that sense, our implementation record has been outstanding. The budget has really delivered, as have our previous budgets. They all belong in the 8 or 9 out of 10 category. And as far as the concern that Shashi has expressed about small and medium businesses feeling unsure about the future, let me assure him that what the most recent data is showing is a V-shaped recovery. Things are roaring back as we have always expected that they would. And we've had some
really
cases
believe,
of
sir,
deferred
Mr.
consumption,
Sinha, I'm sorry
some
to
cases
interrupt.
Of people putting things on ice for a little while.
You really believe that this budget has cushioned the country against demonetization's ill effects?
Brilliantly so, Rajdeep, because you, as I said earlier, whether you look at rural consumption or urban consumption, both of those have got a tremendous boost. And as this consumption picks up, as people start to spend again, the transient effects of demonetization will vanish quickly. And instead, what we are going to get are the very substantial, very massive impacts of demonetization in the long run kicking in, lower interest rates, higher tax collection, an economy that is cleansed of the corruption and the black money that we have seen in the past. All of those positive, very strong structural things will start to really play and get into action here.
Okay, so we've had 2 very different views from the BJP and Congress. Presumably, Jai Panda, at the end, you would give me a middle ground. What's the biggest strength of this budget? What to you is the biggest weakness? A quick response. You're the man in the middle.
Any budget will have good things in it and some disappointments. I've already told you that I'm very happy. I'm very happy about the political funding reform which I've been advocating for many years. Another good thing is the fiscal deficit. Now, let's not scoff at 3.2%. 3% would have been good, but let's remember that they inherited a 3.9% deficit and they brought it progressively down to 3.5% and going to 3.2%. The trajectory is very clear. And the reason this is very important is when a country rating comes out, sovereign rating by Moody's or Standard & Poor, the single biggest factor they look at is the fiscal deficit. So I think this is very good, and considering that the electoral pressures that they have, I think this was a very good development. I'm also very glad about the tax rationalization, particularly for the lowest bracket of salaried class people and MSMEs. I must mention some disappointments. In the spirit of cooperative federalism, we had been hoping, and BJD President Naveen Patnaik has spoken of his disappointment, that the transfer of funds to the states has gone up by a meager 5.5%. This should have been much higher. So overall, I think it's an all-round kind of budget. It's got many strengths, but clearly some disappointments for legitimate expectations.
Shashi Tharoor chose not to rate the budget. Jayant Sinha gave it an 8. You have less reason not to give it a high mark, presumably. So what is your final rating of the union budget, Jay Panda?
Well, considering that it has implemented the political funding reform, which has been my passion all throughout for so many years, if it were only on that, I would have given this a 9 out of 10. But considering the other aspects, I'll probably give it a 7 or a 7.5.
Okay, you're being a little conservative in that sense, but clearly this is a budget which has divided the opposition and the government. That's unexceptional. That all happens with every budget. Jayant Sinha, Shashi Tharoor, Jay Panda, appreciate having three clear voices, giving three different perspectives at the start of our Rate the Budget. I'm going to come back to the studio when I take a break, because I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, I have 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses of the budget. I want each of you to tell me what you think is the biggest strength and the biggest weakness of Arun Jaitley's 4th budget. We are rating the budget here on India Today TV. Back in a moment with plenty more. Welcome back to our special coverage of Union Budget 2017, where we are asking our experts to rate the budget. Before we go ahead, I just want to put up 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses of Arun Jaitley's 4th budget. These are, of course, my own reading. You don't necessarily have to agree with them. Strength number 1, tax cut for small enterprises reeling from demonetization. Strength number 2, first steps to make electoral funding a little bit more transparent. Step number 3, record and allocation to Manrega will boost rural demand is what we are suggesting. Step number 4, income tax cuts for lower middle class, so those in that 2.5 lakhs to 5 lakh bracket particularly getting benefits. And importantly, steps to check big cash transactions. Remember, no more than 3 lakh worth of transactions per day in cash. The weaknesses: fiscal prudence may not help in ending the demonetization inflicted slowdown. No measures to boost demand like cuts in indirect taxes. No real big measure to create jobs. No measure to widen the income tax net, and no word on demonetization yields. So those are some of the weaknesses, as I said. No big measure to create jobs, no measure to widen the tax net, no word on demonetization yields. Ravi Shankar Prasad is joining me at the moment, also from the government. They're coming in thick and fast. I'm also joined by Siddharth Birla, senior industrialist. But Ravi Shankar Prasad, you saw my 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses. You tell me, what do you believe is the biggest strength? And dare you say, tell me even one weakness of this budget.
It is not my job to analyze the weakness or strength. That is the job of journalists like you. In our very considered view, it is a very transformative budget designed to make India a better economy, a transparent economy, a more progressive economy. But I will take one cue when you said widen the tax base. It is the first time it has happened, Rajdeep. The Finance Minister of India has shown the courage to tell the country in a budget speech how many people are paying tax and how many are not. In a population of 125 crore, only 24 lakh people are showing their income as 10 lakh and above. And only 7,777 or 71 companies are showing their income as 10 crore and above. How can you have this situation? So there is surely a push. Second, the FM also stated in the same budget speech that how many people have deposited 2 lakh, how many given 80 lakh. All that money does not become necessarily white. They will have to disclose the source of income, and they will also have to pay tax. But the most remarkable part you said did not tangible benefit of demonetization. The advance tax has surged by 34%, the highest ever in the history of India. And that is also because of the need for people to feel that we need to become tax compliant more. This is how I see it. You told me that there is no other incentive for widening, only one thing on this, because I must meet that point.
Yes.
Widening the tax net.
Yes.
Two important announcements. A, corporate tax, the same benefit for companies up to 50 crore, and there's a large number of companies. And second most important, if you are a company, your presumptive income tax will be 8%, but if you go digital, it will be 6%. All these are designed to encourage more tax compliances. That's how I see it.
You know, you make an interesting point about, and I think Mr. Jaitley actually woke up the nation to the fact that we are seemingly a nation of tax evaders. Only 76 lakh Indians showed income of over 5 lakhs, despite the fact that 1.25 crore cars were sold in the last 5 years. 2 crore Indians have traveled abroad. I take that point. But there is a sense that maybe you could have done a bit more. You could have actually stimulated demand through indirect taxation. You did not touch indirect taxation, presumably because GST comes in a few months. But I had Mr. Chidambaram on a program 2 days ago, and he said this was a great opportunity. You've got to pass on the benefits to people to stimulate demand by maybe rationalizing, lowering some of the indirect taxes. This was an opportunity in the sense in post-demonetization to get growth and investment back on track. Do you really believe that this budget will enthuse industry to go back, to go back and invest? Will private investment be stimulated? Will jobs be created?
You have asked many questions. Give me some time. You talked about Mr. Chidambaram. He presided over India's financial administration for 10 years, Mr. Rajdeep Sardesai.
Yes.
Can you cite one instance of Mr. Chidambaram taking any proactive measure to contain black money, to contain corruption? He only came with banking transaction tax once in the first UPA, and he withdrew it in 15 days' time. That is the record. Let's leave it there. Now, first of all, when you are telling about the demand creation part of it, this massive investment of 10 lakh crore provision for rural credit. Don't forget, I had handled the communication portfolio, Rajdeep. And this big e-commerce boom in India was powered by rural aspirations. They don't have malls, they don't have big shops. But because the postal department I used for delivery of e-commerce goods all over the country. I saw it myself, how it panned out. Only rural India powered e-commerce. Point number one. Point number two, this 4 lakh crore plus in the urban, in the infrastructure in the country, how it will do? Electronic manufacturing. I'm also the Minister for Electronics. The incentives given today, do you know, in the last 1.5 years, about 72 mobile manufacturing countries have come to India, including from China, 42 mobile manufacturing, 30 component manufacturing. And Indian digital economy, Rajdeep, is going to become a $1 trillion economy in the coming 5 years. The startup industry, the way it is picking up, leaving even China behind. All these are only going to create jobs, apart from the infrastructure sector, construction, etc.
Do you really believe, because you're a great advocate of the digital economy, I know, do you really believe that this budget, particularly this 3 lakh cap that you have put on cash transactions, will kickstart more and more people to move towards less cash economy? I'm not using the word cashless, but less cash.
I can only tell you, if 1 crore 25 lakh people have adopted BHIM, I observe this cashless, less cash payment, digital payment almost on a weekly basis myself, because IT department monitors it. And Rajdeep, just for the sake of the viewers of India Today, let me give one instance. We talked of Jam Trinity. 26 crore Jandhan account, 11 crore Aadhaar, 108 crore mobile phone. We linked up with Aadhaar about 40 crore bank account total and started giving subsidy to the poor people for gas, for ration, Manrega payment directly. Do you know? We have saved 36,000 crores which used to be pilfered by fictitious claimants and middlemen. That's how digital economy works. And I know once the people get tuned to it, after all, how we could add a mobile phone in India equal to the population of France and Italy in the last 2.5 years. Therefore, let us trust the tech-savvy temperament of Indian people. As I always say, Rajdeep, just a minute, they first observe technology, then they adopt it, then they start enjoying it, and then they become empowered. That's how I see this process. And surely Indians would love it. Yes, genuine cash you can always use. Why not?
I'm going to ask you one final question. Lot of good intention, no one doubts that, but implementation, at the end of the day, when you announce all these schemes, where does the money go? Will it go into a bottomless pit? I remember when you were in the election campaign, you called Manrega white elephant. Today the same white elephant has got 48,000 crores. I mean, somewhere do you really believe that the money that you're allocating, the difference between outcome and outlays that Mr. Chidambaram, to use his name again, would often speak about, do you believe that the outlays you have made in this budget will actually result in positive outcomes? And was this budget to that extent about finally shedding that suit boot ki sarkar image once and for all? You are now a government of the rural poor. As we are putting it in our headline, you have bet big on small. Small industry, the rural farmer, the rural poor.
First of all, Rajdeep, let me clarify very clearly. Our government is neither a suit boot ki sarkar nor suitcase ki sarkar. It is a sooj-booj ki sarkar for the people of India.
Nice
one line. That's the first thing, note very clearly.
Nice one line.
And in the wake of the in the wake of the massive shame we had to suffer because of scam after scam of UPA, I can proudly say, under Narendra Modi government, there is no corruption, and I mean every word of it. That's what we have done. Therefore, our economy is being feted also by the World Bank and by the IMF of the others. But you talked of outcome. Yes, we have said we have increased the allocation for Manrega, but today in the budget speech, the finance minister has clearly stated 5 lakh ponds have been constructed. The outcome is there. I talked of Aadhaar, 36,000 crores have been saved. The outcome is there. But what is important is this whole big investment with the government of India consciously has decided to accelerate growth will also be further partnered by the private sector. As I said, digital economy, $1 trillion. All this is going to create a big ecosystem for growth. Yes, skeptics will always be there, Rajdeep, but my take in life is always this: the glass is half full or half empty. We will say today the glass is 2/3 full. We'll make it completely full.
I'll leave it there. I have a half glass in front of me. I'm presuming, therefore, you're rating this budget as a 9 on 10 or a 10 on 10, right? 9 or a 10?
Rajdeep, that is your job. Rajdeep, that is your job. We don't rate it, we work. Okay?
Okay, let me leave it there. Thank you very much, Ravi Shankar Prasad, for joining us and giving us your sense. We are joined by more big guests. Amit Mitra, Finance Minister of West Bengal, now joining me. You're hearing Dr. Mitra, the government euphoric over the budget. Your reactions as a member of a political party that has been perhaps the most critical today of this union budget. And I want you for once to try and be as objective as possible. I know you're now a politician, but even so, try and be objective. What is the biggest strength and the biggest weakness of budget 2017?
I think first of all, Rajdeep ji, what I would like to submit is, when you do a budget like this, first you take into consideration the ecosystem in which you're placing your budget. That is that your GDP is falling due to demonetization, admittedly by your own survey, by International Monetary Fund, and then others even go to the point of saying up to 3% fall, others say 2%. So first take into consideration, admit that look, I am placing this budget in a demonetization atmosphere where whatever the good or bad reason, the government has broken the entire supply chain. 12 lakh power looms are closed in Maharashtra. Now that's a kind of micro level when you're looking at it from 35,000 feet. What is interesting to me is government seems to be in denial of the reality on the ground that GDP is falling. And let me submit to you, as an economist, a student of economics, fourth quarter, most economists think, could be worse than the third quarter because of the time lag it takes to even repair a long-term process which takes at least 6 8 months to do.
Sir, let me interrupt you. The finance minister says there will be a recovery in the next fiscal. 2017-18 will see a sharp recovery. You don't subscribe to that?
I think first of all, he has to admit where he is today. After all, 2 Nobel laureates, 5 other top economists have made their position clear. So he should come out and say, well, this is the process. Now, the second interesting thing is, Mamata Banerjee said in the morning intuitively that this is directionless. What she meant is, this fundamental process is the starting point of the budget. Now, you come to questions of small and medium enterprises. Now you have given some money to small and medium enterprises. I'm showing you how this is a half-baked process. In Bengal, we have a capital incentive program, which is what the small person who has now suffered completely. Many of them are closed 70%. They want to resuscitate. So you give some money, they will not get the loan, because they are in terrible shape. You could even connect the capital subsidy to an employment generating index. That would make sense. But here is a bureaucratic process of simply giving some amount of money to the small and medium enterprises, which is in bad shape. What about the unorganized sector, sir?
What would you have done?
More than 80%
Dr.
of the
Mitra,
employment
it's
is
very
the unorganized sector.
Dr. Mitra, it's very easy to be critical of the government when in opposition. Please tell me the one thing that you would have liked Arun Jaitley to do that he didn't do.
I think in the case of small and medium enterprises, I would have suggested, if I were in his place or somebody else who would have advised him, please introduce a capital subsidy to the small and medium enterprises, connect it to employment generation, and you will get the output that you want. You will repair the whole broken supply chain. So my submission is there. Now number 2, in agriculture. Now you have given 10 lakh crores to the farming sector according to the budget. Are you not aware that 92% of villages of India do not have a bank? I know the CD ratio, the credit deposit ratio, is miserable in most of the parts of the country. I know that cooperative banks have been destroyed as an institution in the demonetization, just like RBI. Now what happens when you allocate 10 lakh crores in paper? This does not reach the rural sector, because they don't have the banking facilities available for this to be dispensed, because I deal with it every day. I do the banking meeting every month. So my submission is, there I would have said, you want to give something, you must give something to the rural sector, understand their problem. Where is it they've been hit by demonetization? Introduce it with that matrix. Here it is simply an allocation of 10 lakh crores without understanding the ground level, which I've explained to you. So here are 2 examples, and then there are more. What has the budget done to the corporate sector? I heard a senior corporate person saying, old wine in new bottle. Another person, I heard him saying on the television, had the courage to say that no, we have not got anything much from it. So I am talking about the unorganized, the small and medium, and the large. In that value chain, one would have wanted to see a consistent pattern of a future path of development, building up from the demonetization hit in the economy, which you admit and say, fine, we tried it, didn't work, this is what I'm going to do.
So you believe...
And this is the methodology. I don't see that, and this is where Mamata Banerjee said...
You believe the government is in denial on demonetization?
She said that it's kind of...
You believe the government is in denial on demonetization?
Absolutely.
You believe
How many times did you hear the demonetization word?
Okay, let me bring in Siddharth Birla.
Not only in denial, they're in denial of the fundamental crack that they have done to the process of supply chain in the whole process. I've given you an example. My leather goods, completely 7 stages destroyed. 70% of exports of India goes from Bengal.
Are you saying this 25%, are you saying the 5% tax break or the 25, the tax break that has been given to small and micro industries is not enough? Is that what you're saying? That you don't accept our headline that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have bet big on small?
Micro industry people have said, Rajdeep ji, micro industry is telling me, I've spoken to them in the day, they said we are cracked, our turnover has come down by 1/5. And you even heard the two-wheelers, big companies. I saw Mr. Munjal officially on the paper saying my sales have fallen by 40-50% right at start. Their components all come from small and medium enterprises. Why can't we understand this?
Okay,
you have to repair that entire supply chain from the vendor to the final output.
I think you're making very strong points, and clearly you are an angry middle-aged man, if I may be allowed to say that here today on the show. You're an angry finance minister of an angry government in Bengal. But I want to bring in Mr. Birla. You heard what Amit Mitra says. He says industry in general is seeing this as old wine in new bottle, that there is no attempt made to incentivize industry. There is no, of course, cut in corporate tax. Was that what you were looking for? Has this budget therefore failed to enthuse industry, big industry?
Would you... Rajdeep ji, would you allow me to please leave, because
yes,
I have to
thank you very much, Dr. Mitra. Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Birla.
Yeah. Thank you. You really put me on the deep end coming after Ravi Shankar ji and Dr. Mitra. I'll give you a slightly different take on this whole thing, just to answer one question. When Dr. Mitra was wanting a very explicit confirmation of the problems of demonetization. I think if you look at the combination of the economic survey and the budget, I think implicitly everything, that is the ecosystem within which this budget has been made and formulated. So I think let's not debate over the niceties, but the fact remains that there is an implicit recognition that there is a problem. I look at it slightly differently, problems, we can say the problem is caused by demonetization. I look at it that, okay, this is some kind of a negative business cycle. It could have happened because of a flood or, God forbid, an earthquake or some other calamity. We would have had a 6-month negative cycle. It's part of business. Let's face it. That the decision has been taken and we have to face it. I think the key word for 2017 going forward is to build confidence at 3 levels. Consumer confidence, investment and business confidence, particularly with the oncoming GST, where business confidence is going to be very, very important.
Sorry to intervene because I'm short of time. Has the budget done that? Sorry to intervene because I'm short on time. Has the budget really increased confidence, investor, business, consumer confidence?
The budget has taken the first positive step towards building confidence. We need to see how the rules and regulations pan out and how it is implemented. That will determine the success of this beginning.
But would you therefore agree, would you have liked to see more? What is it that you would have liked to see that didn't happen in the union budget? I know industry generally tends to be very soft on the finance minister, but let's be hard for a moment. What would you have liked to see Mr. Arun Jaitley do that he didn't do?
I can't pinpoint what it is as a policy, but as an outcome, I failed. I mean, I'm still floundering to see what is it that will drive domestic or private investment as far as the budget is concerned. So I see very little that is going to revive private investment until the consumer markets and everything. And I think we are now 1 year further away from revival of private investment than we were 6 months ago.
That is a warning signal that we are 1 year further away from a revival of private investment than we were 6 months ago. I think that's a big statement to make, Mr. Birla, and that is a warning signal. That's the darker side, some would say, of demonetization. And to that extent, maybe our political ruling class lives in denial. But I appreciate your joining us. My guests in the studio have been just watching and listening. I'm going to come to you in a moment. I apologize for not having come to you all earlier. We've been having all these political guests giving their viewpoints. We've listened to them. We'll get the experts who are hopefully a little bit more objective than our politicians tend to be. But as we head into our break, let's listen in to the finance minister. We have had finance ministers who like to become poets when they do the budget. We had Chidambaram, who would quote the legendary Tamil poet Thiruvalluvar, and we would have Manmohan Singh, who would often quote from Ghalib. Let's listen in to Finance Minister Jaitley giving his shairi and then come back with more on Rate the Budget.
नई दुनिया है, नया दौर है, नई है उमंग। बहुत अच्छा। नई दुनिया है, नया दौर है, नई है उमंग। कुछ थे पहले के तरीके तो कुछ हैं आज के रंग ढंग। रोशनी आके अंधेरों से जो टकराई है, काले धन को भी बदलना पड़ा आज अपना रंग।